Just because you can buy something doesn't mean you should. There are so many people out there who make big purchases. They buy a home and they max out their mortgage. They take out a massive loan that they will be paying off probably until they die. Let's say the house is priced at $800,000, which is pretty typical here in Ontario, Canada, where I live. Let's say I have $150,000 to put down on that property. That means that I will be taking out a mortgage for $650,000. That's a lot of money. That is a significant chunk of change. And the interest payments on that $650,000 will be significant. But a lot of people do this anyway. They do it why? Because they want it now. They want the house now. They don't want to wait. They don't want to invest and save and put themselves in a better financial position. We're indoctrinated in Western society to want the fancy title, the big house, the nice car. Housing is the biggest expense of most North Americans. And so if you're not strategic about it, you're going to put yourself in a difficult situation. And this has happened to many Canadians, Americans, and people in G7 nations. People are over leveraging themselves to afford real estate. Real estate that's not an investment, that's just a roof over their heads. This video is not about why real estate is so expensive, because it is. It's extremely expensive here in Ontario, in many places throughout North America. This video is about thinking before making purchases. And like I mentioned, housing is the biggest cost that most North Americans will face. I think people need to shift their mindset when it comes to purchasing property. Buying a home in itself is not really an investment because that home is not going to produce income. It's not going to put money in your pocket. In fact, it's going to take money out of your pocket. We're talking interest, maintenance, property taxes, all these different expenses that most people don't even consider. A home is not an investment. I don't think it should be seen as an investment. Yes, some people have seen extraordinary gains in their home values, but those gains are locked away in the bricks. That's not liquid, that's illiquid. You can't go out and buy groceries with the value of your primary residence. So I think we need to shift the mindset away from the home being an investment and seeing the home as four walls and a roof, and ultimately a massive liability. If you can't easily afford to make your mortgage payments, you shouldn't be buying a home. If you have to do mental gymnastics to get a mortgage, you shouldn't be buying a home. Even if you can afford to buy a home cash, you should think twice before making that purchase and getting those keys. I know that a lot of people, especially in today's market, end up over leveraging themselves. They can afford to take out that mortgage and purchase that house, but they shouldn't because they're setting themselves behind. Instead of investing into themselves and into the stock market, into businesses, into creating additional income streams, they are tying up their cash flow into their property. So I often cringe when I see people buying properties, buying condos, single family homes when they're not doing very well financially. Look, if you've got $1 million in the bank and you're making good money and you want to buy that property, that house for yourself and your family, and that's something that you want, go for it. There's nothing wrong with that. And I'm not saying that real estate is a bad decision, but I think it's a decision that many people just kind of run into. They don't really think about the consequences of their actions. So in business, a lot of businesses use debt to finance their operations. They need to get money somehow so they can purchase inventory, supplies, pay their workers, all these different things. But debt is used strategically. And if you increase the amount of debt that you hold on to, you're increasing your risk. The risk is that you may not be able to make your payments. If you lose your job, if cash flow becomes uncertain, you may not be able to easily make your payments. And this is what happens to many people. They lose their jobs. Maybe then they go on EI, and employment insurance doesn't pay enough to afford your exorbitant payments, your mortgage payments, your maintenance, all these additional costs that you're incurring as a result of taking on a property with a very large mortgage. If you have a large net worth and your cash flow is stable, and you also ideally have at least two sources of income, buying a property is a lot less risky. Taking on a bit of debt, a smaller mortgage, is not risky because you can easily service that debt, make your payments, you won't default, you'll be fine. But many people don't do that. Many people buy as soon as they can. And I think this needs to change. So many people own homes, or at least the bank owns their home, the lender owns their home. They own a small piece of it, and that's the equity. But a lot of people think about homes the wrong way. And this whole idea of over leveraging yourself is not isolated to real estate. People all the time are financing new cars. They're taking out loans, they're financing, they're paying interest on a vehicle that otherwise could have been used to pay down debt, to invest. This is really unfortunate. If you need to finance a car, in my opinion, you probably shouldn't be buying it. In general, I think it's better if you can just buy a car outright in cash and not finance it so that you have no payments, or at least very low payments. The bottom line is, if you can't easily purchase it with cash, you should definitely think twice about making that purchase. And most likely, you shouldn't be buying that thing, whatever it is. There's this quote in Fight Club that Tyler Durden says, and it goes, "What you own ends up owning you." And I think this is very accurate for a lot of people. Housing is the biggest example that comes to mind. When you purchase that home and you own it, it starts to own you because you're tied down by those large payments that you're making every single month, by that property tax, by those maintenance expenses that are reducing your ability to invest your cash into opportunities. So next time you're thinking about purchasing a home or financing a car, just spending money in general, ask yourself, can I really afford this? Is this a luxury item that I really don't need to be spending my money on right now? Can I save for another few years to put myself in a better financial position so I'm not going to be stretching myself very, very thin? Ask yourself these questions before you make these purchases, and I guarantee you, your life will be much, much better. Do not make the mistake that most people make. Do not over leverage yourself. Do not get yourself into a ton of consumer debt that you'll be forever trying to claw your way out of. I hope this video was helpful. If it was, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe to Earned Escape. This channel is all about personal finance, financial freedom, and ultimately moving towards your dream life. Because I believe that the dream life is within everyone's reach if you're strategic about your present and your future.